Hello, I'm Merzendi, and welcome back to War Thunder. Last time, we had suffered defeat twice over, but I did promise we would have some sort of victory, and I do intend to keep my promise. Now, the first thing we're going to do is activate this research booster, and I'm actually going to switch over to British tanks. This isn't because British tanks are better, in fact, they're really worse, but because I've had more practice recently with British tanks and German tanks, and that way I'll actually be able to have some sort of victory. If not, then, well, this episode is going on until I've won once. Believe me. I don't particularly mind if that means this is a 10-hour episode of constant defeats. Okay, if it takes that long, I won't carry on. But, yes. I do intend on winning. So, here's the British tech tree. Now, the British tanks have only been introduced very recently. In fact, they were only made available in full earlier this month. So, we've got Crusaders, Matildas, Churchills, Camerons and Conquerors. This composes the heavy tank tree. We've got Tetrarchs, Valentines, and Archers, Achilles, Avenger, Charioteer, and Tortoise. Past the Valentine, this composes the Tank Destroyer tree. Up to the Valentine, it is medium tanks. And we've got the A13s, the Cromwells, the converted Sherman Firefly, also known as the only useful Sherman in the entire war, the Comet, the Challenger, and the Centurion. This is the full medium tank tree, and of course, we've got the T-17, AC, Mark II AA, and Crusader AA, Mark II and Mark I, composing the AA tree. Here we have some premium vehicles. I do own the A13 Mark I 3rd Royal Tank Regiment because I did play in the British Armoured Vehicles beta and I was lucky enough to unlock it. Sadly, I didn't manage to unlock the Firefly Scorpion or the Black Prince, but we'll hopefully be able to unlock an equivalent in the main tech tree at some point. So, let's get started. I haven't used the Valentine Mark I very much so far, so I may struggle a bit with that, but I have used the Crusader quite extensively. So, while we're loading in, let's talk about the biggest problem with British tanks in World War II. And let's actually cancel that deployment and do a little to avert it. That problem is the shells. The British Army did not believe in high explosive anti-tank. They did not even, during the Second War, believe in high explosive armor piercing, which they swear by these days. No. They believed in a solid projectile that, because of its velocity, could penetrate armor. Unfortunately, in that belief, they did not take very much, or indeed any account, of what the shell would do once it actually penetrated the armour. The German tank shells, they were able to pierce armour and then explode, causing significant damage. The British tank shells simply penetrate armour, and then penetrate on, and on. If you are not in the direct path of the shell, you're fine. More or less. Here we are, unfortunately crippled. But, yes. Without any explosive fuse in the shell, the British tanks cannot damage opposing armour. They can penetrate it for days. In fact, the 2-pounder cannon that this Valentine and the Crusader were equipped with, at ranges of even a kilometre, they could penetrate the side armour of a Panther, or even in some lucky cases, though not quite reliably, a Tiger 1. But once they had penetrated, that was all. They couldn't do very much. So, yes. That difficulty is represented very, very accurately in-game. So here we are now in an aircraft attempting to take out this bomber before it inflicts irrevocable damage. Thankfully, we've managed to take it out, so now we have a heavy machine gun and a cannon with which to strafe our adversaries. This should also bring to light the second largest problem with British tanks, which was their exceptionally weak armour. Even more so than other tanks of the earliest stages of the war, British tanks had incredibly weak armour. As you saw, what eliminated our initial Crusader wasn't another tank, it was an anti-air vehicle, equipped not with a 20mm cannon, not with anything of that sort. Equipped with quad Browning 50 caliber machine guns. If the armour of a tank can be penetrated by 50 caliber machine guns, that tank cannot seriously engage not just other tanks, but also fortified infantry positions. The Germans, thankfully, did not deploy 50 caliber machine guns in support of infantry, but let us hypothesize about a situation of war between the British and the Americans. The Americans did use the Browning M2 in fortified positions. That is the famous 50 caliber machine gun, the .50 BMG of international fame. if a British tank could be eliminated by that, the British could not fight against these hypothetical American adversaries. And moving back to actual adversaries in the Germans, while the Germans did not use the 50 caliber in infantry, it was used, and larger weapons, in fact, were used in anti-air capabilities. Now, you will hopefully all be aware of the famous Flak 88 that was an insanely effective anti-tank weapon. But not just that. Even the 20mm used on the Flak Panther 1. If that can penetrate your tank's armour, then your tank really cannot fight. So yes, let's now move back to the battle ourselves in. Well, as you can see very clearly, we are reliably penetrating the armor of our adversaries, but we really aren't doing that much. In fact, in that case, we over-penetrated. And I'm now very clearly firing too low. Unfortunately, despite all of those low shots, I wasn't able to actually cripple the tank's ability to move. So, this Stug 3, for example, let's take this. That first shot, as we saw, it eliminated the Stug's driver. Now, if we were in an opposing German tank, we would have, in the same shot, eliminated the Stug's gunner, because the shot would have exploded once inside the tank. But because we are in a British tank, the shot just went straight on through the armour, straight on through the driver, straight on through the side armour, out the other side, and off into space. We had no ability to actually... We did not have an explosive shot, we did not have any chance of eliminating the full crew. So now, we're in a T-17E2. It's equipped with a twin-linked 50 caliber machine gun. And I have it loaded with tracers. Against other British tanks, we are going to be very capable of eliminating them. But against German, American, or Russian tanks, we're going to have a little more difficulty. Sure, en masse, our shots will be able to land a few in the driver's vision slots in a similar way that en masse archers could land arrows in the visor slits of a helmet for a medieval knight. But unless we can get that situation for non-British tanks and even for British heavier tanks like this Valentine Mark 11, we can't expect to have complete success. So, the case we've observed right there, we can agitate these tanks, we can cause light damage. We cannot cripple them. And if we can't cripple an opposing tank, we are more or less doomed. And now we've run out of ammunition. Without ammunition, we are entirely doomed. But once our gunner is replaced, he can reload remaining guns. And yes, we now cannot vertically traverse our guns. So we are entirely an object of irritation, not an actual combatant. So here, this adversary means to actually cause damage. So yes, what we're going to try to do is this. As you saw there, we managed to move up close to him, shoot a hell of a lot of shots, and the fellow turned his gun around. Because he turned his gun around, he wasn't shooting at any of the tanks with AA capability, well, with anti-armor, not AA. AA is normally anti-air. We had a lot of AA capability. We did not have anti-armor capability. So, yes, that is what actually mattered, the anti-armor capability. He turned his turret away from them, and as such, they were able to take him out. Now, we don't really have long enough in this episode for another full battle, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this T-17E2 out for a test drive. I'm going to load everything with armor-piercing incendiary tracers, and I'm going to demonstrate to you its capability against German tanks. So here we have a Panzer IIc, only at 280 meters, but that's still a respectable distance, and as you can see, our shots can penetrate it. In fact, it's dead now. Here is a Panzer IVC, actually out to 520 meters, and yes, once more, our shots can penetrate. It's clear we need quite a few more shots to take it out, but we can take it out. Now, the next tank along is the Panther Außer D. So, let's move up nice and close. And as we move up, I'm going to switch to a new ammunition belt. That means that we'll be able to fire a full 400 shots without any breaks. So let's stop at 350 meters. Here we are. In fact, we're a little closer than I expected, but yes. Let's just empty this full belt in both guns into the Panther. Now, can you see what the problem is? The problem is that the full extent of the damage we're dealing is incredibly slight damage to the tracks. So we're now going to move up to 200 meters. Any closer than this, and I'll be quite frank, the Panther would just take us out. So we're going to empty this next 200 shots into its side. And lo and behold, we can't do anything to it. At all. It's so completely impossible that I'm actually going to move up to not 100 meters, to 10 meters. But here we are, 10 meters. What are we doing? We're doing nothing. Still. Would you believe that the Panther, the best medium tank of the war, is basically immune to 50 caliber machine guns? So let's also move to try its rear armor. The rear armor of the tank generally being the weakest. Maybe we'll get some luck here. It seems not. Now, just remember how effective this T-17-2 was when used against us in our Crusader Mark II. It completely obliterated us. It was barely half a second of fire and we were dead. That's how extensive the armor of a Panther is. That's how weak the 50 caliber actually is. But before I go, I'm actually going to demonstrate this 2-pounder cannon. And I'm going to demonstrate it on the Panther. Now, 2-pounder refers to the size of the shot. It is literally 2 pounds. And you may think, that doesn't seem very much. And you'd be right. It really isn't that much. But because of the velocity that it's travelling at, it has a lot of penetrative power, as we can see. From 0.78 kilometers, we can reliably penetrate the side turret armor of this Panther. In fact, to such an extent that from 0.78 kilometers, with just eliminated that panther. Now, the Tiger 2 Herschel is something of a different story. I'm just going to fire at it just once. And as you can see, nothing. And now, this Panther 2C. We have hit it, we've taken out horizontal turret drive. We kept going. No major damage. The second shot took it out because, to be quite frank, I got lucky on the angle there. But here, this Panther 4C, 520 meters, that's a reasonable engagement range. If anything, it's a bit long for War Thunder, but also perhaps a bit short for actual Second War combat. Who knows? So, yes. Our shots are deflecting off a lot. This is quite a bad demonstration for the 2-pounder, but there we are. It managed to deflect through the driver and off somewhere into the sky. So, yes. That does bring us to the end of our time, and next time we'll see if we can squeeze in 2 fights, or perhaps one longer one. So, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time on War Thunder.